All right. Jesus Christ. I feel like everything is like, do you have that feeling where everything just feels disgusting despite the fact that it's not? Or is it? I don't know. I hate this place. I necessarily hate it. I just hate that it's not clean. Ugh. Disgusting. Well, it works. And it is great. Hello there, everyone. Or people. Or whatever. 86, hello. Thank you for the like. Yeah, so updates coming in all over. I feel like my thing is a bit weird. I don't know why. We're good. Should be good. Alright, then move that over there. And then I'm gonna just upload something here. I don't know why. Okay, wow. There is lots coming in. London has to cut Ukrainian military training program due to noise complaints. The Times. The newspaper writes that the LYDD City Council received complaints from the local residents demanding an end to the constant explosions and smoke. The Minister of Defense listened to the request and agreed to limit the noise and reduce the number of exercises by 30%. Yeah. They perhaps are also conducting night training. You know, I mean, I do want to agree that I think it's a bit ridiculous that they're training just outside the city. Perhaps they should move it out to more disclosed areas. I mean, we could probably find areas that isn't as populated to be able to train these folks here. But yeah, you know, what terrain is very like ours. I think you should consider moving the training to mainly Poland, because Poland's territory is much like Ukraine's. I mean, it's just my point out here. I mean, this is not, you know, unlike, but yeah, it doesn't matter. So, Sweden to consider sending Gripen fighters jets to Ukraine. Gripen is their own jets. Sweden actually produces their own jets, just so you're aware of that. The Swedish government will instruct the country's military to investigate the possibility of sending Gripen fighters to Ukraine. Sweden Radio News reported it on September 12th, citing its source. This was from today, so it is a pretty good thing coming out. These are formidable aircraft as well, so pretty cool, pretty cool. Okay, well, there are some other things here. So, Ukraine lost 71,500 people, 543 tanks, and almost 80,000 very armored vehicles during their counteroffensives, Putin said. He added that if the U.S. believes that Ukraine is ready to negotiate, the Ukraine needs to cancel Zelensky's decree banning negotiation with Russia. Yeah. So, obviously a lie. I'm not going to discount the fact that there was Russian fallen soldiers. Let's not discount the fact that there was losses on both sides. But, however, that does not mean that there was, you know, 71,543 tanks and various of 18,000 damaged vehicles. I believe those numbers are way over Tim, but yeah, it was way over the amount of what I would agree to that would happen. There is some other news here, and it is quite some disturbing things here. We aren't allowed. There's no casualties in these videos here. We should share this. This is one of the things that Russia does through the Geneva Convention and UN law. This is not allowed. So the Russians are using what is in forest west of Crimea. Russians force shelled Ukraine positions with 9mm 22S 122 millimeter incendiary grade rockets. Footage shows the burning magnesium thermite elements floating down through the tree. So here you have it. This is actually magnesium falling from the sky here. Now, if this gets on your body, you know, it burns through anything. It is an extremely, you know, it's as if the stars are falling. I'd say the best explanation of this is it is a, you know, something that is very much banned and looked as a war crime. And this is not the first time that the Russians, in fact, has done something like this. This is one of the probably third, fourth, maybe 10. I mean, it may be a large number of times when we've actually seen the Russians do such a thing here. Their tactics is to use these magnesium or incinerating rounds to fly them off over enemy positions to draw the enemies away from that set position so they can, you know, but it is a thing that is. Oh shit, you can't see. Oh, my bad. I didn't even show it. Sorry. There we go. We'll watch it again. So here you have it. This is from, I don't know if it's from today, but it was set to be from 22 hours from today, maybe last night here. So yeah, this is how it looks. This is magnesium incendiary rounds, and they use it, you know, again, fired over the hills, and they actually burn out here. And you know, if the reason why they're banned is because if it gets on a body, and you know, you see the area where it's spread out, it's quite hard to avoid, you know, any of it. And if it gets on you, it is a game over. Perhaps, you know, if it gets on your leg, it burns through. Anywhere that, you know, your body is mildly exposed, you know, you would need a thermite shield to keep that away from you, which is so that's why it's a war crime, and that's why it's such an aggressive way of war, right? So this is, you know, what the Russians does, and this is one of their tactics, so-called, to try and draw out, you know, Ukrainians from their positions. And it's not the first time they've done this. You know, let's remember that this is not the first time that we've seen the Russians use tactics like this to burn them out. There has been secondary pushes, a little bit of a push in the area around here in Donetsk. As you can see here, when you zoom in here, there has been some smaller pushes and gains here by the Ukrainian army, where some Russian forces have retreated a certain bit. This area, certainly here with the village, seems like a likely target for the Ukrainians, as they are able to perhaps entrench on both sides here, free the village up. So actually, you know, quite a bigger push here coming in from Ukrainians. The most popular area around Rabatani, down there in the Zaporizhzhia region, has not seen any actions since we got areas turning on Zaporizhzhia, I think. This area right here has not seen any action since 2 days ago when this happened right here. This is the last action, so the Alliance are holding on both sides. So this right here is the biggest assault of the Ukrainian army so far, and they're also appearing to be making assaults all along, breaking through. Now, as you saw in my title, it was announced yesterday that the Russians are in fact going to mobilize close to perhaps 400 to 700,000 troops, for the 200 of which we know may be coming in November, and other than that, you know, our reports say that it could range up towards the 700,000 mark, and that is a considerable man force. You know, the quality of said man force is probably going to be less effective. And our points is also that, you know, the Russians are pretty famous for doing such things as mobilizing up forces and then, you know, putting them to the front. They're quite famous. They've done it throughout pretty much their whole existence as a leadership they have done such things as to, quality over quantity, over quality. So volume over quality is what the Russians. That's the way Russians fight. The way they do things. Today, we also had news of Kim Jong-un appears to have arrived in Russia. We will get you that. But first, we will watch the daily news here from Flash. Let's get you that.
Кто-то там дальше по пролету кричал, понял, по центру.
Терпи. Водички, да?
Ми готували і продовжуємо готувати нашу енергосистему. Станом на сьогодні підготовка до осінньо-зимового періоду входить у свою фінальну стадію. Наразі ситуація наступна. Атомні електростанції. Відремонтовано 7 атомних енергоблоків. Теплові електростанції. Міненерго взяли на себе зобов'язання до початку сезону. Запрацюють 25 енергоблоків, які дадуть енергосистемі 4,5 ГВт потужності. Теплоелектроцентралі майже 80% обладнання відремонтовано, інтенсивні ремонти тривають і завершаться вчасно.
Common defence procurement is now a logical consequence, building on research and development through the EDF, because if you develop something together, you're creating something together. So this then is the key to true European defence, where European forces work together on the basis of shared defence goods.
that man right there is, I believe, the mayor of my hometown. He certainly looks like it. No, that's not. Wait, is that him? No, it's not. It's not him. Although these guys right here, we are known quite often. This guy's Morton Messerschmitt. There's a reason why, they're lined up like this. These are, there's the three assholes of the Danish parliament. Three assholes lined up in line right there. I'm gonna point out my personal opinions about these guys are not great, if you couldn't tell. This guy over here to the right, this man right here, is our former prime minister. Right now, he's the foreign secretary. How you would say, your foreign affairs minister. That's this guy right here. At least that's how I think you say it on English. Both these guys are just domestic, and yeah. So, no idea who that I mean, perhaps I've seen it before, but this is great and all that. This guy, I don't, point out my personal opinions about these guys aren't great, but I don't want to say who these guys are. The three assholes, and then the guy on the right who was their former prime minister, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just want to point it out. Yeah, sorry for stopping in the middle there. I don't know why I felt like I had to share that with you, but sometimes I just want to be as honest as possible. So, all right. Well, we have some other stuff coming up here, and I want to show you the plane news that are up here at the moment. So let's get you plane news here. So we have a Russian special flight squadron up at the moment. We just saw Putin actually dismount one of these. So it's not sure that Putin is on this one, but it is one that we know that he is traveling, and it's also one of them that we know has purposes of traveling next to what is the Doomsday plane, but it's very unlikely that Putin is in the Doomsday plane. I want to point that out. It's very likely that if he was to travel, he would travel in one of these, as this is also one of the planes that we've seen him traveling before, but this is also to accommodate other Russian officials. So we have two river joints. Both are river joints, and in the middle of the U.S. is not uncommon. Other than that, we have tankers. We have some transport planes, and nothing out of the ordinary. I have seen an increase in special flight squadron flights in Russia from the latest year, but I believe it's possibly because of this, North Korean president and all that. So probably not too inconspicuous, but the whole idea that he's there, is an inconspicuous thing, because that means that, whatever he's doing there, he's doing something. And I don't know what to feel about it. So I'm not a big fan of him. I don't know who's a big fan of Kim Jong-un, but you know what I'm saying. There appear to be some increased surveillance here along the Belarusian border. We got a Black Hawk and some sort of Polish border guard plane flying around there. It's been doing that for quite a while. We got a tanker going on here. Other things include things like Airbuses Airbus and transport planes, Black Hawks, P8 here just out Sicily, which is something not uncommon as well. Turkey doing ransomware with their drone there, something we've seen happen way before. Keep an eye on Syria is what they're doing. Also sometimes conducted drone strikes from that area. That's what we know, but that's for another discussion. We have a P8. We have a P3, which is a sublocator. We have two P8s up here. Look at that. Yeah, two P8s. And behind that, a tanker and a Boeing 737. Alongside a military Super King Air, which is also surveillance. So lots of P8 action. So they're certainly keeping an eye on if there's any submarines around. Down here in Florida, there's some surveillance going on. Not unusual activity. The Boeing NC-135. I've not seen that one before. Huh. Let me look at what that means. Boeing NC-35. Not seen that one before. The type of work performed by these aircraft is generally varied between includes refueling tests with new aircraft type, airborne laser trails, wide lens training for astronauts, and numerous programs involving the testing of airborne equipment and space technology. Oh, okay. So these are some kind of testing equipment, testing either some kind of equipment or we got 3 river joints up then. Yeah, testing of equipment and space. So some kind of NASA thing or well, I don't even know. Never seen that before, but certainly not a plane that flies every day, but does not appear to have any consider it. You want to keep an eye on the VC, Boeing VC 135. That's the Phoenix. That's the one you don't want to see flying up. Actually, we saw the VC here doing some time here. We saw it flying here, which is one I've never seen that before. We had a Boeing VC, which is a nuke sniffer, you know, flying right here. That came just after North Korea had launched a nuclear missile test, which went successful, and it was actually a test that was relied on the function of being able to literally tactically nuclear strike South Korea. So that came just after that, which was North Korea playing its muscles. Yeah. When does it not play its muscle? Alright. Latvia has started allowing cars with Russian registration into the country. This happened after the European Commission classified the imposed sanction. Dave Lee reports the decision came into force at 18 o'clock on September 12th. In case of malicious disobedience and refusal to turn around the border, the car may come into confiscated. You get it. Alright, well, this is the first step of many, I think, to completely closing off that border. The Latvians, of course, have full rights to do so, as it was the rule by the EU. Too close to say that any vehicles or, that are Russian number plates, I believe, would not be either not allowed or would be searched. I don't think they're allowed to actually travel into the yeah. So, not a fun day, right? They're not allowed to travel into the EU anymore, apparently, with Russian plates. So, pure so. Oh, look at that. Momentum to Ukrainian hero has been put up near Tbilisi, Georgia. Look at that. That's actually really cool. He's got his way he stands right there with a cigarette on mouth there. Look at that. hero. Look at the detail as well. I mean, everything is just, it's an incredibly detailed statue right there. That's an incredible thing to, you know, be remembered by. Excellent work there. Very well. Of course, the heroes. He was from Georgia, a volunteer, I believe. Also one of the countries that Russia has been aggressively attacking before. So not a fun time. Not a fun time. Yeah. A lot of stuff happening. Still. There are a lot of border disputes at the moment because there's a lot of people not agreeing with some of the things that may have occurred on the borderlines between the Belarusians and the Polish, as some of the Polish has been forced to take actions that is regarded by many under international law as to be outside international law because the brutality of it. It is a shame, you know, because the Belarusians and the Wagner who are in the country has made it so unclear to who is now crossing the border that the people who are genuinely seeking asylum into Poland might, I remind you, illegally breaking through a fence, which in any case is illegal, but the treatment of them is something else, and we have to stay respectful. But it is to be true that the Belarusians are the ones instigating the factor of sending these people over the line in the first place. And also, might remind you that the Polish can't take any chances, because if they take chances nowadays, you know, with allowing Wagner, who have already threatened to implement terrorist attacks inside Poland, and possibly they could have been believed to maybe be dressing up in civilian gear, trying to get across the border as civilians. So that's why the Polish are so vigilant right now, because they have to ensure, there's videos of some of these people being stripped naked simply because the Polish can't take chances at the moment. And that is why they have been instructed to be so careful into who they're allowing to even take into custody, or even take across the border, or even in any cases take across the border. Some of these people are sent back to be suspicious of maybe actually being Wagneteers. And it's an unfortunate event that Belarusians has pretty much single-handedly fucked up everything that was before and actually could have been before a civil event. But the Polish are, and you can't see me doing this right now, but this close to closing up the border with Belarus. And I'm my fingers, I'm doing the things with the goes. They're very close, I should say, to closing up that border, because they simply can't allow the they simply can't allow the Wagners or terrorist groups or anything like that to get across that border and to cause any damage and put normal everyday people's lives at risk, Polish lives. So it's a lot right now, and it's something we hope to not happen. But at the end of the day, it is a completely Belarusian fault, because it is their responsibility to take on the hat that they have allowed such a humanitarian crisis to exist within their borders and without having any repercussions. I mean, of course, the sanctions and stuff like that has been happening, but yeah, it's a lot. So the armed forces of Ukraine inside Klishchiv, a settlement where thousands of Wagner forces lost their lives or got wounded, and now only their flag remains. It is being taken down. So there was some of this area that's been taken back here, which is great. Remnants of war, you could call it. There hasn't been any recent updates when it comes to Wagner. Actually, I have not seen any recent updates about it. It seems like they're being kept in the dark at the moment, not really being updated as much. All right. So, your update on the cooling in the area around 7pp, there has been slight decrease in the water of the the water in the cooling plants has actually seen some reduction from 16 meters and is now beneath 16 meters and actually at a 15.97 as of 8 hours ago. This is not sure. We're not sure if this means a serious repercussion. I mean, the dead point, of course, still is 12.7 or below, or a little bit above. I'm not really going to remember, but this one used to be at 17 meters. This one used to be 11 meters, and now both of them has also decreased, as well as the main cooling pond has also decreased slightly. As though I will remind you that this is not any means of way saying that there's any thing happening. What I am concerned about is the fact that I have seen reports of the Russians not only having harassed some of the workers that are working at the plant, but some of the workers have, after my understanding, either been detained or actually shot. I don't know. I mean, there was apparently some, these there were some of these people that they didn't follow the orders of the Russians that led to their demise. That's some of what we've known of. We've also heard stories of the Russians that are beating some of the workers and then beating him just so he can recover and then he can come back to work and then he can, this is their process. This is the way that they're working to undermine these workers and make them so submissive to them, and the fear of being hit and some are broken arms and all that. So the conditions are not great, and this means that the workers' conditions and the workers in general, some of them are not even there, and it's very unexperienced workers, as what I've been told. So I wouldn't say there's an immediate threat, but there is certainly something of a threat here as we are leaving, a nuclear power plant. Might again remind you, it's the biggest nuclear power plant in fucking Europe, so it is not a funny thing here. Yeah. It is not something I ever would have imagined them doing. Of course, I'm kidding. They of course would have done that. Because it's the Russians. So they do. They use fear to implement strategies. It's the way they it's the way they live life. It's the way they run life. It's the way to do anything. They use fear to get you to submit. And that's yeah. Take a look at the strategy that has been made by Putin, the nuclear word strategy. He likes to use the N-word a lot. Not that N-word, the other one, the nuclear. Imagine if he was going around saying the N-word, then he would be even more hated. Zelensky also stated today, Russians want to freeze the war and turn the shocking events into everyday life. They want genocide to become something that plays in the background, the president said. Zelensky emphasized that the world has not yet united enough against such actions by Russia, so Ukraine is trying to establish new partnership. Good for them. And also to point out that Russia right now, their strategic goal is to pressure the Ukrainians enough, and this is their 700,000 mobilizations, volunteers, as they like to call it. They actually have said that it was volunteers. I doubt that. And that's what their idea right now is of, you know, that their idea is we are going to put so many men on the front line that we can hold the front line for as long as we need to hold it, so that we can eventually sue ourselves into, sorry, not sue, sweet ourselves into a position where we can have a stalemate or a ceasefire. Then we can rebuild, and eventually, you know, one day, now they have this massive land bridge of areas, right? They have this whole land bridge right here where they could rebuild, rearm, re-put, you know, in exchange for perhaps also the, you know, European Union crunching under, as they are sometimes, a very unpredictable group of people. Because the problem with the Europeans is that they like easiness. We're too used to easiness. So if the Russians are now ceasefiring, we don't see any need for it, you know, and we got to rebuild our economies and our stocks as well. You know, we might open up the possibilities for easing of sanctions and our oil and gas prices to be lowered, so we can, you know, continue our days. And what that would also mean that the Russians could simply start importing all kinds of shit, you know, from North Korea, from China, who now wants to help out, Iran, all these allies it's made throughout this war. So it is certainly important right now that if we are wanting to see this war end, we need to push now. There is no other time. If the Russians is allowed to commit 400 extra thousand, or 700, or 500, or 600, you know, between that number right there, extra soldiers to the front, we're looking at not only a manslaughter on the Russian side, as these unexperienced troops are being sent to a front against an enemy that is way, you know, more experienced. The Ukrainians would be crushing them. So, but still, you know, 400,000, 700,000 is a considerable force, and it would take them a while, you know, these human lives that we gotta take into consideration. That this is human lives, and we're just throwing it away as if it was nothing. And I am not all for it. You know, I'm someone who's strongly against the idea of the Russians becoming cannon fodder. Because, and I know some people always go, you know, I'm not. I think it's great. I think it's, you know, they need to burn. They should die. We have to be careful not to turn our lives and the lives of our children into a world where we are teaching them to simply hate the Russians, or to look at view the Russians as an enemy. Of course, they are in many ways our enemy, but the population of the people who doesn't know better, who doesn't have a choice, are not our enemy. They are simply people who did not have a choice, who knows that if they were to disapprove of anything that the Russian president says, or not go to the front, they would die at home and not at the front. You know, we have to be careful sometimes. We still have only one earth to live on, and we have to accept that, you know, perhaps the killing of a single one of us is not acceptable. And I am fully aware that, you know, this goes for both sides. I do not want to see a genocide of both sides of this war. I do not want to see a bunch of Ukrainians being killed. But the Ukrainians, of course, have a cause. They have a cause, and they want to continue this because they have a meaning. You know, we're sending Russian lives to a war that is already lost in so many ways. That's what I call meaningless. The Ukrainians are being sent to a war that isn't meaningless. That is a war that's going to preserve their independence. That's not a meaningless war. However, I will say they need to make this big push now, and they need to break through this line. And it may sound wrong. You may think that I'm a bit of a both sides kind of player. I am in no way a Russian player. I am a staunch Ukrainian supporter. But you also have to imagine that a force of 700,000, men with guns are no matter what going to create a scenario where you're going to lose some men because, the quantity, the sheer volume of that is a, there's no way to imagine what 700,000 people is. But to imagine it stretched out all that front to the addition of the already 500,000, whatever that is on that front line, would mean a very considerable force. So I think this is a terrible thing that the Russians are doing to the people. We have to live on this earth, and I do not want to see a whole generation go to waste. But that is what the Putin is doing. He's wasting a generation of young men. And if the way he's doing this, eventually the Russians simply, the young men will run out. And who's going to rebuild the population? Because you're just having old people. Old people are not going to rebuild your population. Russians would be a dying breed. As much as I want to understand the factor, as much as I want to, get rid of the enemy, I also seem to have it in myself that I simply don't want to see a million people die. And it's hard to explain. I don't expect you to get it, but we only have one Earth. It's can't always wish death upon each other. I think Zelensky in many ways would agree with me. He does not wish these young men, 700,000 young men, or at least middle-aged or whatever age they are, to be sent to a war that both me and him would understand is over in many ways. The Ukrainians, in any rational mind, any rational leader would see that this war is lost. You've lost the war. Ukraine is winning. You've lost. Stop sending men that are inevitably going to end up dead because you're fighting against a superior army. Volumes are not going to work anymore because the Ukrainians aren't fighting in the way we used to. It's not close combat anymore. It is a fight of drones, and it is a fight that takes place thousands of miles away from each other, or you're saying, so this war, the people that are standing 10 miles away from each other are not being able to shoot at each other, but being able to kill each other with drones. Autonomous era, right? So I have a bird there. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird concept. It's a weird thing, but I also think that it is a...
rynkowi rolnemu konsumentom i było pomagać naszym sąsiadom, otworzyliśmy swoje serca i domy. Tacy są Polacy. Ale kiedy trzeba walczyć...
Yeah. Wars. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. A million men died on the front lines. For what? Tell you what the Ukrainians died for. Died for their independence. What did the Russians die for? Nothing. Nothing. The gainings of what? A few miles of land. It isn't even theirs yet. It's not theirs. It's being fought over every day. It's a brutal and dumb war, and Putin needs to It's hard to say. I mean, it's a dream thinking world, right? To think that Putin would draw out now. He can't. You know, he's going to lose his power. What happens when you we have a man that's more focused on maintaining power than maintaining the people of your country? No. He is more focused on maintaining nothing. Apparently that's his goal. President Donald Trump is returning to Washington, D.C. Donald will speak at the annual Family Research Council Summit on Friday, September the 15th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah. All right. Let's get you the update from Niger, see if there's any... Oh, Azerbaijan. That's why I forgot the names of all these wars going on. Azerbaijan. Armenia has ordered 85 made... Oh, sorry. 84 made in China. Sorry, India. ATACMS artillery systems worth 155 million and delivered to commence soon, said Baba Kalyani. Armenia is conflicted to Azerbaijan's currently made this, or last year another Indian weapons supply is also going. Yeah. Ilham Ali, the 20-year president of Azerbaijan, is also suspected of repression and falsifying elections. This will be a common theme on top of the corruption and mutilate human rights abuse. Certainly not a clean guy, that guy. We have another video here of convoys moving up. Azerbaijan accuses Armenia of having used artillery against Azeri forces 2 occasions at what? Oh, look at that. Accuses Armenia of using artillery against Azeri forces at 2 occasions yesterday. The Azeris are moving more heavy systems towards the border. They have marked the vehicles with a down A. It's just like the Russians do, right? They now found their letter of this war, the downward A. Look at this. There you go. So there's a long-ass convoy moving here. This is from, I believe, the Azerbaijan side, as they have now marked their vans with a downward A, as you can see. That is their symbol of war. So it appears to maybe be some kind of artillery systems in the back there. Look at that. Appears to be some kind of artillery systems mounted on the trucks or supplies or something like that. It appears to be, troops in the back there. They're talking about heavy equipment as well. I mean, they are, I wouldn't say silently, but they are definitely mobilizing. And apparently the Armenians there as well has just used their own artillery systems at 2 occasions yesterday. So I'm not sure if the Armenians are trying to lure them into, starting something, but yeah. The blockade of Lashkin corridor by Azerbaijan, which has caused a humanitarian crisis, is aimed at punishing the Armenian people on its own territory. Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez. Yes. Iran is transferring its army units to the border with Azerbaijan and Armenia. There you go. So, great. So Iran is transferred its army units to border with Azerbaijan and Armenia. Of course they are. Turkish President Erdogan says that there can be no gateway to Europe without Turkey opposing India ME European corridor. Here is a pic explaining how this corridor will avoid Turkey and supported terrorism, Pakistan, human rights, world terrorism. Right. Yeah, the part that we use Turkey. Yes, let's say use. You know, our main goal was definitely because sorry, that one just got paused. Sorry. Well, the main goal of it, I don't know if the right way to say it is the main goal, but there certainly was a goal of it to keep Turkey aligned, was because of their so-called blockade of refugees. But at the same time, I'm not really seeing that blockade. Yeah, it appears to me that every time Turkey is a bit, unsatisfied with anything, they just let a bunch of refugees through their border, and then, and then we follow in suit. That's pretty much what they do all the time. It astonishes me that they're even in NATO still, or even still in any consideration for the EU. But yeah. Early in the morning, Russian trucks entered Nagorno-Karabakh from the city of Akhdam. This video shows the truck crossing the Azerbaijani checkpoint. The Russian vehicle has already passed to the city of Eskaran and will soon enter Stepanakert. It is assumed Azerbaijan will allow Russian peacekeepers and the Red Cross to bring in humanitarian cargo from Lynching corridor as well. Impressive. Still happening. All right, I wanted to bring you the latest update here on Lee, the Hurricane Lee. I have seen videos here that suggest that Hurricane Lee is going to be a Category 1. So we have our main guy here with another update. And let's get cracking on watching this.
Joe U11 meteorologist Tim Pandages here with your tropical update. Still talking about Major Hurricane Lee, steady with its intensity as a Category 3 at this time. It's looking like northeastern United States and Atlantic Canada will see impacts as we get into this upcoming weekend. Not so much from a direct landfall, but with such a large wind field, we'll see that wind coming up and over places like Boston and coastal areas of Maine, up into Nova Scotia as well. Today is Tuesday, September the 12th. 2023. Here's the latest update. Now that there are active watches and warnings associated with Lee, we are getting intermediate advisories from the Hurricane Center. So it went from 4 advisories a day up to 8. So we're going off the 2 o'clock advisory here, 1 o'clock Central Time. 115 mile per hour winds currently on Lee. That puts it at a lower grade, Category 3 major hurricane. But take note of its movement. 6 miles per hour. It has been crawling over the last couple of days. 12-hour loop of infrared satellite imagery taking the temperature readings of the clouds. Colder cloud tops, more intense convection or thunderstorm activity. Those cold cloud tops are depicted by the black and white shadings here, and you can see there's definitely intermittent flare-ups of intense convection trying to wrap around a defined eye. It had periods of time where it had a warm, clear eye, but that seems to have faded a few times. Indications are yesterday it went through something called an eye.
It used to be a lot more solid as well. which is also faded as
wall
well.
Replacement cycle. It's typical of an intense tropical system where the eye collapses and it clears on out eventually and a larger eye replaces it, and we see a jump in intensification. Really haven't seen that jump in strength recently. It's really maintained as a category 3 for over the last 24 hours. Here's how it looks on visible satellite imagery. It is a very large system. It's expanded a little bit since we talked yesterday. Now we get a general direction here, a general size of about 1,000 miles. From northwest all the way to south and east, and the wind field also is starting to expand. As of the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center, we're getting hurricane force winds extending out from the center about 80 miles. So we've got roughly a ring from the center that extends out when you go across the entire diameter here. You're looking at around 160 miles, and tropical storm force winds in the yellow here extend out 180 miles from the center, meaning 360 miles out in either direction there. So a rather large wind field. I talked about the increase in advisories coming from the National Hurricane Center. So we're working off the intermediate advisory here that came out at 2 o'clock that gives us an update on watches and warnings, storm details, and the location of Lee. Coming up at 5 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to get an update on the cone or the projected track of Lee going forward. So we're going.
This guy was tracking it before, and now because there are threats of attack. Well, sorry, attacks. It's not an attack. Threats of impacts. The advisories are now starting to pour in because they're wanting to get as accurate information on this as possible. That's why we're getting so many updates right now. He's here with pretty much updates constantly now, which is great or new for us, but it certainly doesn't seem as if there's any real threat here.
Off of the 11 o'clock advisory here in terms of the track with Lee. Not much changes have occurred here over the last 24 hours, really. You can see the active watch up for Bermuda. That's a tropical storm watch, meaning that tropical storm conditions are possible within the next 48 hours. This will likely be upgraded to a warning, meaning that tropical storm conditions are imminent within the next 24 to 36 hours as Lee is forecast to track well to the west, but still Bermuda being on the dirty side of things, meaning they're getting winds coming up from the south. That means increased surf, storm surge potential, and of course the strongest winds and rain will be wrapping around through Bermuda as we get onto Thursday morning and into the afternoon as it continues to increase forward speed off to the north. Notice it will be on a weakening trend too as it eventually encounters cooler sea surface temperatures, sub 80 degrees, which means it can't really take advantage of the heat to exchange it from the ocean and turn it into energy and develop stronger. It'll actually just weaken and wind field expanding. We're going to maintain 115 mile per hour winds, it looks like, as an intensity forecast from the Hurricane Center, so kind of plateauing from here. And then going into the upcoming weekend, that's where still uncertainty lies. Where does this go? Is there going to be a landfall in the U.S. or Canada? There definitely will be a landfall, and it's looking to be most likely in Atlantic Canada, but we cannot rule out far eastern New England.
50 miles per hour per wind is not a massive, the wingspan of it is insane. But the indications is that a 50 miles per hour storm is not going to bring along, mass destruction. We're talking about high tides, maybe. High winds, yeah. Tropical winds, yeah. But it is not a massive storm. 50 miles is not, anywhere comparable to what you would imagine a high storm to, a storm that would be damaging any infrastructure. Certainly could bring along maybe some trash cans flying up the streets or, things flying around. But other than that, it appears to not be. What the further indication was that some said it was going to be a category 5 at the time of landfall. So now that we're seeing it's going to be a category 1 at the time of landfall means, and it's actually going to be just under category 1, it appears, or round that. So not
and portions of the Northeast, talking about Maine here. So notice the cone of uncertainty does get wider the farther out in time. Confidence lowers, so uncertainty
Boston,
grows.
Portland, and
but this is the forecast track.
Boston, Portland, and Halifax is what we got to look for. I believe that Portland, Halifax is probably one of the ones you got to look for. Maine or Canada. So Maine and Canada, the areas around there. Halifax, the island out, well, the island change out there. You can see that the island is out to the side there. And Maine, in general, these are the ones you want to be careful about. Careful. Well, these are the ones you want to be, looking at, because I don't believe that it's going to hit Norfolk, which they're talking about, or New York. I don't think it's going to hit Boston either. The tracks in this seems to be
of where the center of Lee
nowhere near Providence either. So nowhere near
likely track, and it only
either.
stays within the cone 2/3 of the time. So think about that. And the impacts extend way outside of the cone. So if you're watching from Boston, Cape Cod,
perhaps Boston, right? But I just can't see it turning so drastically left and hitting New York. I just can't see that turn happening, because I feel like, he does say that the cone is like the 2 out of 3 times, right? But, Boston Shore does have, this, it could be impacted by some higher winds, right? But I just don't see New York. I don't see New York being impacted by that.
Southern New England this afternoon saying, well, not in the cone. Nothing to worry about. We've experienced nor'easters before, not a big deal. Well, this is going to be a very large system, albeit weaker at this point, but the wind field will be so large that tropical storm force winds and even hurricane force winds will extend way outside of this cone, as far inland and off to the west as potentially Hartford and Springfield. So keep that in mind there. This could be a large power outage situation with a lot of trees coming down as well. A lot of trees still have their leaves on them, so they're able to catch that wind, and we could see that taking down power lines as well. The weakening phase will be brought on by cooler sea surface temperatures. Look at it.
That's true, right? You could see the you could see that happening, right? You could see the idea of outages or something like that, but that's because of coincidence. If a palm team falls off kind of, a power line, and sure, but I just don't believe that it's going to turn so drastically left. It's just going to be large. It's going to hit with its winds are going to increase wind in the areas around Washington, New York, and even along the coast. We're talking about high waves as well. Surfing conditions are not going to be great while Lee's in the area. So yeah, this is a Gulf Stream, by the way. If you've never seen that on this kind of map, this is a Gulf Stream. If you know what that is.
On its projected track here, dropping to below 80 degrees as early as the next few days, and then it's going to encounter a brief period where it could see a little bit of an intensification phase because of the activation of the Gulf Stream here. That's coming up along the southeast coast, and warm waters jet out into its path as we get on into Friday and Saturday before it encounters much cooler waters south of Nova Scotia. So here's all our spaghetti plots, all the computer models, all the ensembles putting out what they think, their solution on what Lee will do. And a lot of these are GFS and European and Canadian ensemble members. And what that is, it's the GFS, the European, the Canadian model that is put out several times, in some cases dozens of times, where the variables are tweaked ever so slightly to see if we get a different results. And that's what you're seeing here. And notice a good consensus, an agreement, way to the south here, just to the west of Bermuda. And then as we get north of there, the spread grows. However, I will tell you that this spread yesterday was about 750 miles from west to east. Today, it is consolidated a little bit. We're looking at a spread of about 450 miles. So we've shaved off a good bit of uncertainty, but still uncertainty exists. Some models still take it up and over Cape Cod and Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard into Boston. Some well off to the east and out into the open Atlantic, bringing it inland in places like Halifax, Nova Scotia, maybe even into coastal Maine too. So there is a large spread still here as we get into the upcoming weekend on exactly where it will go. And a big reason for this is still the uncertainty in the overall steering mechanism. So far for Lee's existence, it's been steered by the subtropical ridge that's been pushing it off towards the west. it has been weakening, which is why we're now seeing that turn to the north. So two different scenarios could play out here. We're looking at a trough or a dip in the jet stream over the Great Lakes region in New England. That jet will deflect Lee a little bit farther to the north and east, keeping it farther offshore of southern New England. That still does mean coastal impacts will be likely. Gusty winds, storm surge in terms of coastal erosion and flooding, and big-time waves. Really, this is going to be a prolific wave maker. The other scenario that the European model has been leaning on a little bit more the past couple of days is this trough flattening out and lifting to the north, kind of missing. These two are missing each other to lift it off to the north and take it out to sea. So as it flattens on out and as this area of high pressure extends and expands farther to the north and west, that could act to block Lee from turning out to sea, first of all, but it will also likely slow it down and maybe even deflect it back to the north and west, putting New England and the Northeast in play here. That's what the European is leaning towards, and that would also mean a longer period of impacts here if the storm
I mean, yeah, it's variables, right? And it's problems, and it's a deep problem. And then, you know, they'd say it may not happen, it may happen, it may happen this way, it may happen that way. There's all kinds of different things. I still think the most likely areas, if you're thinking about it, is Maine or in Canada. I'm not going to rule out New York and Boston, or if in fact it is turning it over. The implications you got to understand here is it's a massive storm. There's no pointing that out, but it is only a Hurricane 1. And a Hurricane 1 is nowhere near a 5. It's still going to bring along perhaps destruction or some kind of, as he said before, tree falls and all that. So it's still unclear. As you know, we're relying on wind to save, you know, us. I'm not in America, but you get it. You get
ocean does slow down. So there are two scenarios that could play out here. I want to show you, in terms of wind gusts, what the European model is showing. We're going on through late Friday up through midday on Saturday. The European says the center of Lee, not too far off to the south and east off of Nantucket's coastline there. That means that the strongest of the winds will be impacting land areas. So look at what the European model says that we could see in terms of wind gusts. By midday Saturday, Nantucket up to 86 miles per hour, nearly 80 miles per hour Provincetown, Boston at 55 miles per hour. And as it slowly lifts off to the north, we start to see those gusty winds move into coastal Maine and parts of western Nova Scotia as well. Now, what about the GFS? Now, this one leans a little bit farther to the east, keeping that storm center just to the south of western Nova Scotia, meaning the strongest of the winds will stay just offshore of southern New England, but still a very gusty afternoon by midday on Saturday, still getting gusts up and over tropical storm force all through Cape Cod and even up through Boston as well, before that lifts off into Nova Scotia as well and things calm down a bit. So a difference between the European as well as the GFS. Now, the probabilities come out from the National Hurricane Center on likelihood of encountering tropical storm force winds. Now, we've got the tropical storm watch up for Bermuda. There's like 50-50 odds you'll see at least 39 mile per hour winds there. Notice how much it drops, though, as you get out into southern New England. The highest odds are about 25% out towards Nantucket. That's based on the uncertainty between the GFS and the European. Obviously, the European shows at least hurricane force winds coming up into that area, and they increase as you get into far portions of western Nova Scotia, Yarmouth at around 40% or so. In terms of rainfall, if it slows down, these numbers will be much, much higher. Right now, it's looking as, from the European model, anywhere between 2 and 5 miles per hour, 2 and 5 inches of rain. That could be more than that. A prolific wave maker as well. Offshore
2 and 5 miles.
Obviously, the European shows at least hurricane force.
2 or 5 miles. 2 or 3 miles of rain. Sorry.
Between 2 and 5 miles.
2 or 5 miles.
2 and 5 inches of rain. That could be more than that. A prolific wave maker as well. Offshore waves could get up and over 40 feet. Those are massive, and they're going to be around for a while until it moves up into Atlantic Canada and begins to weaken a little bit. Now, I like to look at this in terms of analogs or storms that have tracked similarly to where Lee is based on its current position. This is a look at Category 3 greater storms within 50 miles of Lee's current location. So we look back at history and what past storms have done, And so there are 12 storms listed here, and 3 of which made land interaction and landfall in the United States. So 3 out of 12. Low odds here. Most favor over.
All right, but these ones right here, you know, that would be the worst cases scenarios. That would directly impact New York. It would, in fact, be directly on New York, and the other ones, you know, which would hit right over Providence. And every single one of the other ones are showing, you know, the path in where it would head out towards Maine and Canada. Some are saying, you know, direct deflection, which would be our best cause of actions there, but, you know.
Recurve out to sea, but still bringing coastal impacts. Elsewhere in the Atlantic Basin, we've also got Margot, a Category 1 storm, not going to be impacting land. And what we'll have to watch is this one, another wave behind it that's been tagged, I believe, 98L. It's got an 80% chance of development in the next 7 days. Next name on the list would be Nigel. Here's a look at Margot briefly. 85-mile-per-hour winds, a very large, broad system as well as we are seeing with Lee. It will meander to the north as a Category 1 storm and then gradually weaken, not impacting land. So that's the good news. Here's a look at our next names. As I mentioned, Nigel's the next one up on the list, coming up behind Margot. That's the latest for you there. I know this was a long video. Thank you for...
There's always storms coming in, but Lee was a biggie. Still is a biggie, and we were worried because it said, you know, oh, this is a Category 5. And in fact, at the time, and has been, and I believe at the moment it is now a Category 3, but for a while there, it in fact was a Category 5. A Category 5, you know what I'm saying? So, a Category 5. Niger Army seized bread and other confiscating confectionaries intended to be delivered to French troops who refused to leave the country. Sanctions meet sanctions. Right. All right. We got a video of it here as well. Is that croissants? Dude, is that have you seen anything more French? Have you seen anything more French than ever before? Yeah, you can see that there are croissants heading into the French embassy, seized by the Nigerians. Nigers. Well, you get it. You know. Of course, dude. I mean, of course. Croissants, right? It's a delicious food. But wow. It's also another serious situation here. They've been doing it for a while. Taking pictures of embassy cars, making sure to identify everybody inside, you know. So it's happening as we're speaking here. This food was probably what was supposed to supply them, at least for this morning, and you know. This was food for just this morning, you know. There's a lot of people that work there. It's a lot of food, though. I mean, it's a lot of food. There's a lot of croissants. Don't put it back there, dude. It was on the fucking floor. Don't put it back. Eat it. No. Look at that. It's Niger Army right there. Well, you gotta give it to them. They're certainly doing their part in making sure that the Nigers understand that, hey, we're not happy with your with your stuff. Niger, the French soldiers have started packing or leaving the military base in Ulam. God damn it. Ulam. I told you were going to starve them until the... don't put your fucking personal opinions. All right. Well, we have pictures of it. Videos. A video. So check that out. These cars right here, the reason why I know this is actually an embassy car, or at least some of the cars they have down there. I've seen pictures being taken of somebody working in the embassy in this specific car, in this car like this. So it's very likely these are French cars coming out there. yeah, I mean, this video is uploaded like that, but you get a general idea of it. But they're shipping out, they say. Seems like the French came to their senses and took out their troops before it got real bad. You know, if anything does happen, I feel like the redeployment of the troops are something that they could work on. But until then, I say get your troops home and make sure that they are accounted for, so you can re-strategize. I don't know if they're looking at it as a loss. I wouldn't. I'd say I'm looking at it as a we are bringing our soldiers home, and we are then re-strategizing, and we're gonna open up maybe some diplomatic channels with Niger, yeah. And we're also talking about the factor that Niger is seizing their things back. Niger has put up the uranium price. Niger has put up, pretty much anything that before France were, just basically taking from them. The French prices of uranium, not bread, was 0.80 cent. The Nigers have increased that number to 200 pounds per kilogram, which is in fact the same number that you would see on which is in fact the same number you would see on the Canadian uranium, I believe, is what they said. Alright, I want to show you a video that I found to be quite interesting. It is something we discussed before, and it is not a one-time thing. This video that I will show you down here is the medium rent price and the household income. So here's the start of this video here, and as you can see, this is from the United States model, so this is only United States. And in 1986, 87, the household income was above the line of what the medium rent was, and in fact it was underneath that all the time, because that was the standard line. You had to get that happen. So 1987 stock market crash, it said that, right? And the house rent obviously went up. And there you can see just how massive. I mean, in 1994 or 5, it seems to me that they were trying to bring about some change there in 1994, but it was a steady decline there, and then it went straight up again. But this is to point out here, Patrick, how are you? This is the model of .com bubble. So rent prices, of course, going so far up, it's insane. The household income is not even staying at the same level. It is in fact going down so much. It's steadily it's steadily going up, which is of course a good thing, but it's still so far up. They still talk about there. So they talk about tax cuts and jobs, so that of course the household income started to go up. And then, now it's at a sort of steady, at a steady level, and then it was trying to go up there in 2023. So steady going up there. And there's 2023. This is it for December. So right now it's staying at where it is. But this just point out to you guys here. And all these years right here, by the way, I want to point out that Donald Trump came in 2016. And that's when one of the rent price went straight up, you know, when it very much actually increased so much. And doing all these years, I mean, this is also under Obama. This is under, you know, all the recent presidents here. Of course, it appears to me that this was also after what appears to have been, you know, COVID in 2020, where we had the spike increase, and then it went down again gradually because of COVID was, you know, gone down. And I believe that what we've seen here is the Ukraine war. Then it spiked again. This is only the U.S. But as you can see, the household income is so low compared to what the rent, or the median rent price is. And this is the problem. Income are inflation adjusted. So this is the problem that, you know, many countries around the world are facing. This is not just an American thing. This is happening in England. This is happening in Denmark. Although in Denmark the income is still somewhat leveling out with the rent prices. However, in the U.S. and in England, these problems seems to be widespread at the moment. You see, it certainly seems to me that their biggest problems at the moment is that the U.S. economy used to be based on commercial goods. The U.S. economy used to be a commercial and, you know, not tax-free, but low-taxed haven for businesses to be able to grow. And it certainly seems to me that the American economy is still a commercial-based economy, but it's moving gradually to a more tax-based economy. Now, the problem with moving, you know, your economy to a more tax-based economy means that, you know, you're obviously going to have to decrease of the normal amount of household income because the government is taking more of the people's money, while the rent prices, because the buildings gets more expensive, right, goes up. So if they want to fix problems like this, what they need to do is obviously, decrease the tax. They need to decrease the amount of taxes that are taken from the people, right? And to also point out one thing that Trump in fact did do, which was important. You can see in 2016 that people actually started to earn more. During Obama, people didn't really earn that more. It was sort of it wasn't even stable, I would call it. It was in an upward and downward spiral. But you could see in 2016, a good amount of point there, I believe, in 2016, where people did in fact earn more. Now, give Donald Trump, he did in fact get them to earn more. And a steady decline in rent prices, and things were perhaps going the right way. But then it just skyrocketed again, once more. You know, and you can talk all you want about patriotism. You know, a lot of these presidents nowadays, they win the elections about their ideas of, I'm going to serve the American people because that's my honor and that's my that's my duty to the people, to serve you guys, and that's all I need. That's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna serve. I'm gonna work tirelessly. You know, and it seems that their ideas of what they want to do is pure. You know, we want to lower rent prices and increase the household income. You know, that seems to be the ideas. Now, I'm not a, you know, economic, you know, I'm not completely, you know, I'm not an expert when it comes to this, but I am, you know, I do have two eyes, and I can see that there's a real problem here, you know, and how do we get rid of that problem? You know, maybe instead of listening to a president talk about how he is going to serve the American people with patriotism, maybe perhaps you should start looking into the president's plans and what his actually start asking into what his plans about the future actually is. And one of these questions that I think people should start asking the presidents is, well, what are you going to do about the, such a massive difference between the, median, the average, income of the person, household average income, and the rent prices? Are you going to cut taxes and perhaps lower rent, or do concessions or bills, or set a roof on the rent prices? Say that the rents can't go higher than this. You have to, because eventually, if this gets too big, you won't live, and it's already happening. People aren't living, So I just want to ask you that if you are voting for a president one day, please do, if you can, ask them, what are your plans for the economic development of the United States? Now, ask them not, what is the plans? We're going to increase trade. No, ask them, what's your plans for the internal economy of America? Not the external, because too many presidents and everybody on the fucking American platform right now is so focused on having more money than China that they forget that looking strong on the outside sometimes affect how you look on the inside. And I believe that if you in fact are strong on the inside and you work internally, you look strong on the outside. Denmark is not a massive country. We only have 500 million. We only have 5 million people. Close to 6, right? And despite that, many people look at us as a goal to strive towards because of the way our economy works. I mean, we do not have a massive economy, but our internal economy works. You need to start asking your presidents, is this really what we can do? I mean, what about our internal debt? What about the simple idea of actually looking into having the internal parts of the United States working and the internal economy? Things like household incomes appears to be put aside because they appear to win votes by every time they go up on the podium. They always do the same speech over and over. I'm going to serve the American people. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that the American people feel better, and that we are strong and we are showing our result on the world stage. But perhaps the United States are so focused on showing their so-called result on the world stage that they forget to show the result in their own home country. They forget to organize. They forget to focus on the internal problems, which America is plagued by. America is plagued by internal problems. They do not have control on the internal problems. They may control their external problems and be a strong power, but if you do not have a strong external people that not only can work physically and mentally, because if they're able to work because they have free healthcare and they're healthy in general, right, and they have enough money to live, these simple ingredients of a great nation, that you have enough money to live, you have enough money to pay rent, and you have a good health, and a good job, a good paying job, and you have households that are that you can live in, that doesn't have too high prices despite looking like shit. You get a New York apartment that looks like shit will still cost more than what your average income is. The average income looks between what the American model says, 25 to 30,000, even sometimes less than that. That's not a lot of money. To point out the average. Our Danish average is 40,000 per month, and this is in crowns. What's 40,000 per month in crowns? That's okay. Didn't ask you what 45. $6,000. You know, that's $6,500. Roughly that, right? Let's check out the American model. So as to the salary, the U.S. largest across industry jobs, positions, age group, levels of experience. Oh, I suppose that a month. $6,228. So your monthly salary is less than the Danish monthly, salary. Averagely. I just want to say that you have an economy a million times larger than what the Danish economy is, and you still earn less money. You have more people. I get that. But your economy is the strongest economy in the world on its external look. And that's what I'm saying. The external look of America is strong, but the internal look is so weak, I mean, I get that it's going upwards, that they're saying it's going upwards, but what if the money doesn't mean shit? The money doesn't mean squat because you have so much inflation that the money nowadays, you get them as much money, you get close to as much money we earn, right? But you earn barely shit. You earn barely shit because you don't even get close nowadays to actually having the same amount of dollars. Now, the dollar doesn't mean the same as it did in 1950. People were paid so little in the 1950s or 60s, but they still lived in a house and they could pay the rent and everything like that. I'm just pointing this out. Now, let me pointing out that America is a bad country or something like that, but it needs to maybe perhaps focus a bit on its external problems. Internal problems, a little less than its external problems. Perhaps call on the European Union to also help out when it comes to the international stage. I think the European Union relies so much on the United States, but trust me, I want the United States in the back line. I want them to be our ally, but I also want to point out that perhaps we need to focus a little bit less on having them control, and helping them out. Is what I'm saying. Perhaps help out the Americans to control the world, or how do you put it? Protect the world. That's what I'm putting out, right? All right, well, guys, that's going to do it for me tonight. I'm going to end the stream here. Not a busy day. Nothing really happened here today. More news coming in from, the, home thing of Azerbaijan and all that. If anything does happen tonight with Azerbaijan, I will certainly, I will certainly come back live. But, yeah. Other than that, have a good night.